everyone. Welcome to the 16th episode. I literally can't believe we made it this far. The 16th episode of Four Mortal Coils. I am one of the three coils present here today. Today we have a very particular topic. I have a topic that a lot of us have been interested in for a long time. Universal basic income. Well, now initially I was the one that brought up the topic and put it to the list. Generally, the way we work this is whoever positions the topic hosts the thing. And I want to talk for a second of why I picked it, and then from there I'd like to just go across and get some intros going. Oh, and if you do have any thoughts, or if you are a thought, you can post down in the comments. No, you can post down in the comments something or like your opinion on this. Sorry, that was insane. That was ludicrous. Yeah.
No, what's ludicrous is the fact that my cat has been begging me ever since I, got up to record this episode for food, and now he's thrown up half of it on the carpet, and he's now eating it again. That's what's ludicrous. But please continue.
I'll enjoy it again.
Oh fuck.
Okay, that's a legendary reference there. Let's be honest.
This is a legendary beginning to the podcast. So that's what this is.
That scene lives rent free in my head. That animation. Anyways, sorry.
Yeah. All right. So, universal basic income. Now, when people normally think about this, at least Americans, I think a lot of people think of that politician who ran back in like 2020, Andrew Yang. Now, it didn't work out. I don't know if you knew. But he had this position that a lot of people were first introduced to with his proposing it. That is universal basic income. He had proposed to have everybody get paid essentially for free $1,000 from the government a month. Every month you would receive $1,000, month on month, to a total of addition $12,000 each year. And you just proposed it, and you listed a plethora of reasons why I think it was positive and all that sort of thing. Now, he wasn't elected, obviously, but I still think it's interesting to start from that position where we lay down a fact that a lot of people already know about, and maybe we can reference it later. Now, the reason I had chosen this topic was a very particular one. So, for anyone who doesn't know, me personally, I'm initially from Texas, and I eventually found myself moving a little while ago, a little over a year now, actually, year and a half, to California. Now, when I told my family this, I have a very large Irish family. When I told my family this, hey, I'm moving to California, they all said, congratulations, good luck out there, all that sort of thing, don't come back a communist. I swear to God, don't come back a communist. That's what they told me. And I looked at them and I nodded, I shook their hand, and I'm like, I won't. And the first thing I did when I came here to California is I went to the first communist meetup that I could find. I went there. It was something called the Platypus Society. I have no idea why it's called that, but it was a communist thing. It was a big picture of like Karl Marx on like the flyer, and I'm like, that's the one. I came in. I sat down at this coffee shop where it was being hosted. I sat there. It was like it's 2 p.m. on a Sunday or something. I sat there. I waited. Nothing happened. Nothing. No communist activity afoot. Until I saw one dude walking around with like a satchel with a little flyer in there, and I saw the little platypus thing. He was the only dude, and I pointed at him. I went, communist. And he goes, yeah. And then I sat with this guy, swear to God, and we met up once a week for like 3 weeks. He was the only person I knew in California for a moment. And I sat there and I would talk to this guy about communism. Mm-hmm. And it's particularly odd to me because I'm not a communist in any sense of the word, but I wanted to talk to him specifically about this topic. As the world changes, as the world constantly evolves to such a degree that it becomes so easy to do what you and I consider to be a day's labor, as all this stuff gets produced so efficiently, as like Amazon, as all the money that's produced by the product of Amazon as more and more like delivery vans get replaced by drones and autonomous robots that go around just delivering things. As more and more of that money produced there goes into fewer and fewer pockets, does it necessarily become so that we live in a state where universal basic income becomes not only viable, but necessary? And that was my thought that I had with him. Now, In the end, we didn't agree on most things, but I do think, while I'm not a communist, if I was going to try to lend as much credence to that argument as I could, it would be from that position. In the evolution of production, as things become more and more modern. Yeah. Well, anyway, with that introduction out of the way, I would first like to hear Stephen and see how you feel about universal basic income.
Yeah, so welcome people, welcome back. Mostly, I just haven't heard the topic of universal basic income talked out. I've wanted to talk it out for at least a few years. I know we brought it up at least once back in the old philosophy club, but never gained any traction or anything. But yeah, like I say, I've been wanting to talk it out for a few years, but I really sometimes I don't know where to start with the idea. Um, if I want to start with the assumption, that no, or the assumption yes, or anything like that. So I'm definitely looking forward to it. Um, we'll see. We'll see.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Bray, let's see. Universal basic income. How do you feel?
Yeah, so this is actually something that I've been more and more interested in talking about since I kind of, I don't know, I'm going to use the word radicalized, since I became kind of radicalized when it comes to a similar argument, which is universal health care, because I think they essentially are the same ballpark, so to speak, uh, as far as why I support them. Um, but yeah, I'm in support of universal basic income, and I feel that um, it's going to be necessary if for whatever reason I would deem it not already necessary. Um, and I'm speaking for a larger argument can be made for people across the world, but I'm speaking in particulars about the United States because that's where I live. So yeah, I'll be kind of talking about why I think it's a good thing and things like that.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Cool. Well, Stephen, if I could hear a little bit more about like how you directly feel about this topic, specifically, like, are you
Yeah.
pro or against
Yeah, so
universal
my
basic income?
my my knee-jerk reaction is like this can't work.
Right. I knew.
like just
Yeah.
seriously, like my knee-jerk reaction is like, okay, people, at the end of the day, we do have a finite uh, amount of resources. How are we meant to, uh, have a universal basic income of any kind? It doesn't actually matter if we're trading paper or stones or anything of value. Ultimately, there is a finite supply. Now, like I say, I've been wanting to talk about this for years, so that's just my knee-jerk reaction. I also have a thought that we have a very American sense, probably, that he who does not work does not eat. We're taught that in school, even. Uh, so it's going to be a very hard topic for American sensibilities to kind of get over.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, so if you're uncomfortable, you've probably come to the right place. Uh, I mean, like, let's talk about it. What's the worst that could happen?
Mm-hmm.
You walk away more enlightened about what this idea is. But if you're like me and you have a knee-jerk reaction, you should probably put it down in the comments, and then
Mm-hmm.
maybe make another one later if you change your mind.
Make a follow-up little reply and then
Hmm.
actually, comma. Well,
Hmm.
so when talking about this topic, now talking about knee jerk, I honestly, a lot of the way that I approach living generally, I really do. I am more akin to what Stephen just said. This reaction where obviously that won't work. It's you and that one phrase you would just use, I think, is quite important and quite interesting. Specifically, if you don't work, you don't eat. It's this. That's the kind of reaction that I most commonly have when I interact with this sort of thing. I do think reality is punishing. You do have to change in order to fit the rivets of what not society needs of you, but what life actually needs of you, not the abstraction of the world, but like, well, the abstraction of the world, but you do need to change. You do need to make changes of yourself in order to engage with and be successful in the world. No one can hand deliver it to you, because even if they did, there would still be, even if they tried, let's say, not did, tried, there you would still it would still be incumbent on you to still work and still work hard in order to survive out there. Like you have to change for this world in order to exist within it, or else it'll destroy you. And that's commonly not the attitude towards just universal basic income, but of thinking and of living that I usually take. And that's why this particular topic is so absolutely concerning to me, because my first thought is, well, it can't work today. It can't work right now. It can't work in this place, in this time. It can't work in 2024. Look around. Now, I live in California now, and it feels even more true than it ever was. I know a lot of people around here who do quite literally just live off of food stamps, and that's just what they do. And they live off of like rent control. They live in a van down by the river. You know, they do one of those two things, and they just do their thing. And I'll do what you want. Honestly, I mean, the state, all that kind of stuff, set up that kind of stuff for those kind of people, I suppose. Not that I'm not trying to level any sort of opinion, but the state is set in such a way here that that is just what some people do. But it's just it seems necessarily true as time goes further and further on, as the centuries go by, that you have systems set in order, such as the one I already mentioned earlier, Amazon, where they work harder and harder and harder to make things more profitable. That's the whole point of the matter. That's the whole point of the matter of like Amazon is this company to generate profit. And it's more profitable to streamline the system and replace everything with automation if possible. That's generally the way that things are ordered. And you could try to say, well, okay, well, people are just going to get jobs fixing robots. Well, not if there are robots designed to fix robots. Or like, oh, they'll design the software. Well, not if there's software that designs the software. Or at the very least, I mean, the ratio of jobs that are generated towards lost would be so absolutely incredible that, I mean, it's a conversation that's sort of meaningless. I mean, people will find their niche, I suppose, but it gets does it not get thinner? Does it not change? That's a really open question, one I quite genuinely don't have the answer to. And I find myself thinking again and again, well, universal basic income. Money flows into pockets, and then suddenly the pockets get fewer, and here's the position we're in. So I just don't know how to feel about this topic, where to go from here. Now, Bray, I'd like to ask, please, Stephen.
I was just gonna suggest that, like, um, you know, for me, my knee-jerk reaction isn't just that it can't work in this time. My knee-jerk reaction is that it can't work in any time, and that spells doom, uh, in a lot of ways. And of course, what I mean by that is, um, totally taking a scientific viewpoint of the universe and so on, just a completely materialistic viewpoint that is the only viewpoint. We live in a material world. Um, there's only so much, right? Scarcity will always be with us. Now, where it gets fuzzy for me, right, and where it gets fuzzy for a lot of people, I hope, is that maybe eventually we will have a lack of scarcity that we really don't have, like, we don't have to worry about things anymore. Um, maybe we'll have a lack of scarcity in the future. Certainly we have it now, but um, what I mean, of course, is like we'll always have absolute scarcity, people. But for me, directly where it gets fuzzy is what if we have like near unlimited resources? What then? If we have
Right.
near unlimited efficiency with our machines, of course that's not possible either. But what if we have arbitrarily close to really really efficient machines and so on,
Hmm.
and technology as a whole, I should say, efficient technology where it turns energy into our basic needs and so on.
Mhm.
Like I say, it's where I get fuzzy. That's how I wanted to
Mhm.
elaborate more about where it grays out for me.
Right. It's So the question right now, the question I think is on the table for most people when they think about universal basic income. Like if you go on, I did this earlier today. If you pull up Andrew Yang, his like website, and he talks about his argument. The usual concern is food and water. That's like the things that they say. Like this is the issue that needs to be curtailed or solved. And I think, if I understand it correctly, the central assertion is that to produce food and produce water, you reach a level where those things now become no longer an issue for scarcity for the population that is of this planet, and it reaches a point where those things are quite easy to acquire. And as that happens, you sort of uh, create a system in order, such as like $1,000 a month in terms of Andrew Yang, where you can come in and subsidize it for individuals, such as my neighbors around here or anywhere else in the United States. They go out and they can acquire these things with this uh, progressively easier to acquire element as far as our we are concerned. That is to say, food and like basic energy requirements. Now, Bray, I was curious how you feel about this specifically. Like, you've laid out on the table exactly how you feel about universal basic income, and both Stephen and I have put forward our reservations about doing it today. I'm curious how you specifically feel about this. Like, how do you feel about instantiating it today, and why that may exactly? How do you feel about it?
Sure. So yeah, I think a lot of the problems with thinking about instantiating things like this today, number one, is because they are incredibly progressive policies, and in the United States, we are already what's the word I'm looking for? Sort of handicapped to the right. Um, Even our many of our Democratic candidates, as opposed to Republican candidates, are closer to the center than most other Republican candidates are in comparison. In other words, we have a right shift or a right lean in our country. Uh, in other words, we could use more progressive candidates in the big leagues against where we have been pulled recently, which is further to the right, with sort of the instantiation of a new type of Republican and a new type of Republican president that is currently on the books to go again. That's one part of it, is that we lean right, and that this is something that is incredibly left, based on our current political structure. Another thing is that we have a very, very particular culture in the United States that centers around sort of wanting to make a lot of money, and then that will somehow solve all of your problems. And by making that money, it's because you, like I'm sure all three of us and many of the people listening, it's because of what you were told when you were young, which is that if you go to school and make good grades and work really hard and get a well-paying job, that everything's going to work out for you. It's part of the classic American dream that has just been lingering around for almost 300 years, I suppose. But it's my opinion that the American dream has been dying a slow, agonizing death over the last several decades, and my generation definitely feels a lot of that. Uh, if
How
you
could you
found
not?
somebody, you're right. If you found somebody my age that doesn't feel like part of the American dream is crippled, then I would venture to say they're operating from some sort of stance of privilege.
Hmm.
Even as somebody who works, who operates out of some stances of privilege myself, like I still struggle, and so that should tell you that there are millions of other people who struggle even harder than I do, and I'm already fed up with it. So, when it comes to UBI, let me touch on how I relate that to the healthcare thing, because I think that's the easiest way for me to relate to it. Um,
I definitely want to talk
Basically,
about this one.
sure. Basically, the way I see a UBI, you could consider it almost as a form of healthcare. almost like a form of insurance, almost like a form of social safety net, or financial safety net, if that word works better for you. I see it as the government doing what I believe government's role is, which is to uphold and ensure the well-being of all of its citizens to the best of its ability. And I think that by ensuring that everybody can get the health care that they need to survive, uh, then that is probably one of the most important things that our government could do. Um, I am much more a fan of the idea that we should take care of each other, and that just because you were born something that you had no choice in, let me remind you that you were thrust into this world not by your own hand, and suddenly, you are more or less forced to participate in whatever society you happen to be born in on the planet, for better or for worse. And if you don't, then you will simply perish. uh, so you already have kind of been dealt a bad hand, so to speak, however weird that might sound. But you've already been kind of put on the plank, and told that if you don't conform to the way that we are, then you will just die. There is no, we will. Well, let me back up there. There are support programs in place. We've mentioned some of those already. For example, we have welfare programs in the United States. We have some sorts of assistance for people who are not employed or have disabilities, or things of that nature. But we don't generally look at people who are, for example, homeless or unhoused, whichever term fits your fancy, as we were just discussing in a previous episode. We don't generally look at those people as um, the same as people who are working a job, or even people who are working like a minimum wage job. I think a lot of people would be like, well, this person, at least they're doing something, or whatever. And there's a lot to be said about whether or not there's some fundamental difference between somebody who is working or who is not. For me, it comes down to this, and this is going to be a little, unorthodox, or not something you may really hear me say a lot, because I'm very a matter of fact, like scientifically speaking kind of guy. But short anecdote: last year, during the summer, I went to Bonnaroo Music Festival in Tennessee. And if you know anything about Bonnaroo, then you know that it's a very sort of, high energy, good vibes, like mellow situation. Like, it's very much people just it's just one of those places where, like, it's really hard to have a bad time. And everybody's just happy and enjoying themselves, and whatnot. But I was going through the Cinnaru, the central part of the festival, and I stopped in this one area near some market stalls and things like that, and near the big fountain, and there was a sign, like a huge wall, where they had like a prompt. People have prompts for all kind of stuff, and they're like, come right on the prompt with a marker what you think about this. Used to do it at college all the time.
We did.
And the prompt was something along the lines of, like, what kind of world would you like to live in? And there were all kind of different answers. But
This
I
one, of
found a little
course.
spot. Yeah. I found a little spot, and I got a marker, and I sat there and I thought about it, and I was, I don't know why, but the thing on my mind was the future of labor in the world. It's something I think about a lot, especially now that artificial intelligence is catching up with us. And I thought about, what is that going to look like? Like, are we? This is coming from the perspective of someone too, whose mother, whose guardian figure in my life, has worked 2 full-time jobs for her entire life since she was in her early 20s. maybe had a couple of streaks here and there where it didn't have to do that, but pretty much has every single day woken up the crack of dawn, gone to work, and not come home until like almost midnight, and gets maybe one day off a week if lucky. That is living to work. You are alive so that you may work. And so I went to the wall and I said, I'd like to live in a world where we work to live, not the other way around. And however you want to take that, however you want to look at that and say, well, we all got to go to work or we all got to yada, 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 like just sit with it for a second and imagine a world where instead of everybody, quite literally the phrase, instead of everybody living to go to work and just slave away their entire lives until they're too old to enjoy themselves anymore, or they've, destroyed their bodies by going to a 9 to 5 manual labor job for decades, and then just sit around at the end of their life and collect some measly retirement or whatever, if they're even that lucky. I know there are people coming after things like Social Security. uh, if you're lucky. It just seems all so backwards to me. And so that's why in our conversations past, I've said, I welcome things like automation. I just don't think that our current structure is set up for us to enjoy the fruits of what automation can do for us. I would much rather be at home consuming literature and art and different forms of media and putting more of that out there and traveling and exploring and actually experiencing what life is supposed to be rather than feeding some sort of business machine so that somebody at the top of the pyramid can make a bunch of money and I can just struggle my entire life to, enjoy a week-long vacation maybe once a year, if that. So, after that monologue, that's what kind of comes down to my surface level why I like the idea of universal basic income. And maybe
So
I'll pass it back over to you. We may want to talk about the difference between a universal basic income and universal basic services, because I, at this time, lean heavily into a universal basic service idea as well. Maybe a little bit more than just a UBI.
but here's the problem, right? So um we were me and my friends were watching a whale documentary the other day, and I actually made a joke about it to my students. I did the math, and these whales, right? They go on a 350 million calorie bulk in in the course of 4 months,
Golly.
and then they go on an 8 month cut. I mean, it's so like we're sitting there watching this documentary, right? And so we watched one on land dwelling, mammals the other day with like elephants and stuff. You know the drill, all right? And so we're sat there, and this calf whale is born. And I said, people, imagine it. I mean, like, it's born, and then in ways that it can understand, uh, something is communicated to it. Hey, it's time to swim, and you can't stop. Like you, like, ever. I mean, it's time to swim, dude, and you ain't gonna stop. And then my buddy Ashton goes, well, I mean, imagine what elephants think like. I mean, you're born, it's time to walk. I mean, like, you time to walk, you gonna walk forever. And look, look, what I bring that up for, funny story. Really though, nature does not allow you to to do nothing. It just doesn't. Like, as a living being. I was just talking about this today with a student who I find this so often. Just as a side note, how many students at my school do not understand the basics of evolution. There's a big thing to be said there. But anyway, so I was talking to them about like uh, how evolutionary biology works and so on. And the niche of sitting and basking and living is already full. It's completely occupied by trees and grass. Like that's how the DNA, that's how the genome expresses into the niche of sitting, basking, and waiting for food to come along. Like, there are some eukaryotes that aren't quite plants, like sponges, who can do the same thing. But we are not that organism. We are not so built. We are not so constituted to to have a UBI. Like that's my knee jerk reaction. Um, I'm not saying we can't overcome that, because I really feel for Bray, because he and I are all but in the same circumstance. Raised by a single mother in most parts of our life, married or not. Anyone who has unfortunate upbringing knows what I mean. If there's a step parent in the house, it ultimately sometimes doesn't matter. They're more of a drain on resources than anything. But so my point is that my mom did the same thing. And the other day, and I really wanted to bring this up, and I'm glad I can fit it in here. The other day, I read this, or excuse me, I watched a video of some kind. It was probably short form, and it said, "Let me get this straight. People who work at McDonald's don't deserve a living wage." And then they brought up all the money that the U.S. government pays into the employees of McDonald's to live. It's like, let me get this straight. The American taxpayer is bankrolling McDonald's. Not only are we we're their complete source of income here. We buy their shitty food, but we also bankroll their employees to make the shitty food. Like, I mean, our tax dollars go into feeding those people that McDonald's has decided don't get a living wage. And I know it's not just a decision. I mean, even some of the most left counterparts I've ever met with that are at least halfway reasonable people understand that McDonald's did not wake up yesterday and decide, we really want to put these people to the millstone. Like, I mean, like we just really feel like making a slave wage class of people. Like, it didn't happen all at once, and it's not going to change all at once either, people. It can't, it won't. Same thing for Walmart. It was in that same deal. Let me get this straight. We've got all these employees at Walmart that have to be fed because Walmart doesn't pay them enough. And then just the other day, I saw a graphic about it tracked like the median income versus rent in this country, average rent in this country. And the median income was at this slow, like just snail pace. And the price of rent was just at this explosion of a place. But if you know anything about anything, you know that if it looked any other way, you'd be very nervous. Because if it looked any other way, it wouldn't be real data. The price of housing has to explode exponentially because there's only so much room, right? But then again, you think, well, but we live in America. Our geography is huge. I mean, like
Yeah.
we can put all kinds of housing projects everywhere. Well, then they decrease the value of this and the other. There's 1,000 ways this can go. But ultimately, I want to revisit my whole talking point. We kind of, as a society, have to decide what to do, but we have to observe humility before nature, and the laws of nature suggest to us that we can't sit still, and that we can't we can't just stay here. It's not within us to do so. We can't not work. There
So
has to be
so one.
some kind of
Mhm.
product of work. And I
Yes.
really want to revisit the issue of goods versus services, but maybe now's not the time. If it is
Mhm.
the time, let me know.
I want to say one thing about this McDonald's and Walmart situation that you just mentioned. Now, I didn't know that actually, but it sounds to me, I'm specifically noting like the fact that McDonald's workers are in a way
Yeah.
subsidized by
No,
the
no. So
government through the
Trevor,
fact that they don't have a living wage.
just to elaborate a little bit on the data that they showed, I just want you
Please.
to have all the data like that I saw. It said some ludicrous figure like 40-50% of all McDonald's employees, full-time McDonald's employees, even something like that, were had to buy into things like food stamps and whatnot. In other words, their employer is not paying them enough to literally live.
Yeah, yeah. So my first
It's
thought
it,
about that
yeah.
is, yes, the subsidization, the fact that they get subsidies from the government because McDonald's refuses to pay them enough. My first thought is that sounds like a band-aid solution that was done by the government to
Oh,
help
by a
these sort
very,
of
very
peoples.
thin, intelligent person,
Yes, like somebody who's not
just slap a
planning the
band-aid on it.
next. Yeah, exactly. Nobody who's planning steps ahead. They're just going, let's slap this
Right.
band-aid on there. Next thing you know, McDonald's can
American
get away with
politics.
so much more because suddenly they have this crutch fed over by the American taxpayer. It just makes no sense. Well, my first thought of when I think of all of this is, well, A, that's bullshit, and B, like my first thought is McDonald's workers should unionize. That's. It seems I'm very alien to the idea of unions, or at least I was until I came to California. But it sounds like a whole lot of just bullshit situation happening right now for these McDonald's workers, real bullshit situation, and we've been led into a situation where all of a sudden McDonald's is too big to fail, which make the idea of something being too big to fail in any sense is a stupid one to me. It's incredibly
Very,
silly.
very stupid.
If a company's
Untenable.
poorly managed, it should collapse in on itself. It should Boeing right now, if anyone doesn't know, is currently in a shitty situation due to the fact that they're a very poorly managed company and they don't take very good care of their planes, the one thing that they're known for doing, and they don't particularly take care of safety and precautions of that sort, which are things you would imagine a plane company would be quite good at. Not so, as recent developments are being found.
I haven't heard,
Well,
but I'll look
I mean,
into it later.
yeah, it's holy fuck. There's a whole Netflix documentary that's worth checking out for anyone who's interested. Yeah. Well, yeah, bullshit situation there. Bullshit situation. Now, I did interrupt something though, Stephen, if you were saying something.
No, I wasn't. I was just saying I hadn't heard about Boeing.
Hmm. Hmm. Yeah. So going on from there. So when I think about all these topics when it comes to universal basic income, like we've gone through, you can't just do nothing, that sort of thing. You can't just do nothing and then receive something. That sounds to me like what we're saying here. You can't do nothing and receive X. You do zero and you receive X commodity. It sounds
Yeah,
like
there's no
the
free lunch,
general.
right?
Yeah, there's no free lunch. That's essentially
Yeah.
the
And
thought
for all
there.
the nerds of us out there, it's just the law of thermodynamics. There is no free
Mm.
lunch. You can't break even and you can't win.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, when it comes to energy, you cannot break even and you cannot win.
Mm-hmm. So how do we approach this gap here? If I just take it away from just that topic of universal basic income, let's look at some alternatives here. How do you break that gap between this explosive rise and how much it costs to exist and
Right.
and wages? There's this huge discrepancy there. Now, just a second ago, I brought up unions and that sort of thing, but I want to talk about and open up the possibility for other solutions because I agree with your assertion that there is no such thing as a free lunch. I live by that axiom. It's what brought me to California. I do truly believe it, and I do think whether or not I believe it, it's true.
Well, I'm going to pull
So
out a Richard Dawkins on you just to make sure we get our quota. It's not a matter of belief.
it's necessarily a state of affairs.
Yeah.
Yes.
Well, maybe this is a good time to bring this up because just for example, some of the pre-existing propositions regarding UBI, if I'm not mistaken, for example, by Andrew Yang, was like $1,000 a month.
It was.
And so at first glance, the idea of just handing everybody $1,000 a month, can seem a little daunting. Especially if you are somebody who would be like, well, what about all these bums on the street? They're just going to get my $1,000 that I work, an extra minute
No.
for to contribute to, and then they're going to go use it on drugs, or they're going to, go make poor life choices with it. And I'd be like, well, that's probably their prerogative, and you are going to do exactly whatever you want to do with your $1,000 too. Whether or not it's in your best interest or not,
Well,
we'll have to ask the Oracle.
the thing that bugs me,
But
right?
Sure.
And I know Bray will agree with this. And the thing that bugs me is that like one, just one of like our not even the most top of the line bombs that
Hmm.
we buy from
Mhm.
companies to go blow up people with, right? Could house several people
Oh
for
yeah.
Yes. Well,
for like a long
several
time.
several
You
is a
know,
very
uh,
restricted word there. Yeah.
people, the money's there. We're just
It's
Mhm.
using
there.
it. We're just using it. We're using it to
Right.
blow up brown people. You know, like that's what we're
Yeah,
using it for.
let's be clear from the get-go here. The way that I see this too right now, again, sometimes I can be a really high horse idealist, like future idealist. Like where what are we all doing? Like what's the ideal? Like where are we going to end up? Like are we really just going to keep working and slaving away our entire lives? Like will we never reach this, forerunner like Promethean like
Ubermensch, you
or
know.
higher race status where we're just all floating around on floaty chairs and our hands like this and we're like, "Ah, yes. I remember when we all had to work at the McDonald's or whatever," and then you're
Man, that
just getting whatever,
sucked.
whatever. But
Man, didn't that
I,
suck?
as
Yeah.
it stands right now, it feels like UBI is like a band-aid being put over a multitude of different
Issues. Yeah.
issues. Like I've heard the phrase before, like it's a band-aid on something that requires total surgery.
Mhm.
Because there are so many things wrong with the way that our system works in the United States that this is, for example, if you're going to implement a UBI system and everybody got $1,000 a month, you would necessarily have to implement some sort of protection for that money or for the people. Because if you are somebody who owns land or owns, moreover, owns property, and you are renting that property out to other people, then you could basically just be like, "Oh, everybody gets $1,000. I'm gonna up the rent by $1,000." you
Yep.
know,
I was
uh,
literally gonna bring that up. That
and you
what we're
should be
talking about
publicly
is
executed for
hyperinflation.
that. But
No, no,
We're
it's certainly
we're talking
possible.
about hyperinflation.
right,
You
Yeah.
know.
it's just another opportunity for the big guy to make another quick buck off the little guy. So that would definitely have to be implemented. But let's talk about this too before I keep rattling off on this. The
Hmm.
difference between a UBI and a UBS, which is a universal basic service. This is
Please.
something else that I ended up enveloping myself in after I got onto the healthcare train, where everybody should have access to free healthcare, so to speak. It's that, well, why stop there if this is where we're going? Why stop at, if I whether it's me getting my seasonal allergies and I need to run up the street to get a Celestone shot so that I'm cleared up and, ready to be at 100% again, or if it's somebody who's diabetic or needs life-saving surgery and doesn't need to go into hundreds of thousands of dollars of medical debt, and they can just go to the hospital and get it done, and it's covered by the total benefit. Yeah, what's the word I'm looking for? The total
Benefit of mankind.
benefit
Yeah.
of mankind.
Yeah, you're
Like
talking about Star
the
Trek.
Yeah,
You
yeah.
strongest
know.
This is
power that we could generate by literally saying, you know what, we should all team up together to make sure
right.
that everybody is in
Okay, but
So,
the
so here's
highest
here's
form of
here's
well-being,
right. So
or that
here's
we
one
can at
thing.
least support that.
So,
Yeah,
so
go
you
ahead, and then
mentioned
we'll get on the services.
right. So Star Trek was just mentioned. So I feel like I need to reference DS9, Deep Space Nine. There was a particular scene where there are these two Ferengi, these aliens from another society that are sort of like very
ultra
mercantile,
capitalists.
ultra
Yeah.
capitalists, and they are way into the future. They sell
They are
everything.
literally artistic hyperbolic representations of capitalists. I
That's
mean,
absolutely
that's what
right.
they
That's the
are.
whole point of their character. They have these giant ears, and they are these people. So they go into this Star Trek, like this human Federation starbase called Deep Space Nine. And when they're there, they're walking around, and at one point, one of them like gets deathly sick. Like all of a sudden, just collapses directly onto the floor, just like thud. And like these Federation people just grab him, take him over to the hospital unit, this clinic at the Star Point or at the Starbase, and they just start treating him. And he goes like, "I can't. No, let go of me. I
I
can't
can't
afford
this.
And then the main guy, Bashir, the main doctor there, goes, "No, sir, this is completely free. Like we don't charge people. We just do this for the sake of, I do it because I'm a doctor." And then the guy goes, "Really? I have this thing behind my ear. It's been bothering me for like 10 years.
Yeah.
He just gets into this whole diatribe. So why did I bring this up? Well, Bashir did it for free. Like he said, like he'll do it for free for you. He does it because he wants to do it for you. Like he has an actual psychological complete redrawing of what it is he exists for. Like it's true to say, I think, that for a lot of doctors out there, they do have this Hippocratic oath that they must help people. They must do so.
Well,
Or
like Trevor,
they feel
like
a need to do so, but yes.
I've often thought, like, if money were no issue, would you still do your job, Steve? And it's yes.
So would I.
Right.
I love my job.
So
I
would
mean, I love my job. If
And
I knew that money would never be an issue again, and I'm not talking about living lavishly. I'm talking about keeping my, I want to stop renting.
Mm-hmm.
I would like to have a house.
Yes,
Thanks.
same here.
Right.
Same here.
You're talking about the American dream failing. Whenever I look at my students, I genuinely have this big feeling like I really, really, really hope it's unfucked by the time you guys
Get to that point.
are somewhat adult. Like,
Mhm.
and I hope to be part of the generation that unfucks it for you.
Yes.
Like, but that's a tall order, people.
Mhm.
It can sometimes feel like it's like not on your shoulders alone. Of course, it can't be, but it's tall. That's
It's a
tough.
responsibility. It is.
Yeah.
We've been taught how to do nothing,
Mhm.
right? By our boomer predecessors, we've been taught how to do nothing, and then told to survive.
Yes.
It's ridiculous, but we're gonna be okay.
Yes. So the reason why I brought all this up is the reason why I referenced the story is so we don't exist in the 26th century in Deep Space Nine. I think we don't exist in that century. It's not this point in time where like there's this psychological. Well, I do this just for the sake of doing it. The Bashir of today in 2024 expects to be paid. So how do you find? It's a different circumstance. It's not the Deep Star Trek's story. Someone needs to pay Bashir. And these are pretty extensive medical bills you just mentioned, Bray, in terms of this person that's diabetic that needs like a serious surgery that would be in debt for the rest of their life, that sort of thing. So who pays this bill? That is to say, who takes care of this universal basic income? Like exactly how do you encounter that?
Oh, you're asking me. Well, that's
Yes.
what I'm saying is that it's paid for by the collective good of everyone. We're all paying into a system that then pools that and uses that to pay for everyone's needs.
So if we rephrase that, it might be from each according to his gifts, to each according to his needs. Okay, like I mean, look. I really wanted to bring this up. All right, universal basic service. Okay, we really need to talk about something here. Okay, and that's the difference between a right and a service or a good.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so my thing is this, and the way that I've come to understand it is this: if let's say that in the county in which I live or the parish in which I live, that there is one doctor, okay, and the state has decided arbitrarily, I should say, because in nature, of course, there are no doctors. You either beat the infection or you don't. If we're having, like I say, in this thought experiment, one doctor in the county, and then 12 of us are sick, that doctor, he or she can take care of that. Okay. But what if it's 120 of us? A lot more people than 120 live in a county. Okay. What if it's 1,200 of us that they alone have to make the final diagnosis on? My point here is that, like, I don't think there can be a universal basic service ever. I don't even understand that question. So, for example, like if every student who ever like seriously thought about becoming a doctor did become a doctor, we still wouldn't have enough doctors. The population is exponential by by nature, and education takes a long time. We're always going to be rushing to catch up to the kind of debts that were accrued by our
Sure.
predecessors. So, but anyway, my point is that if you can, let's say the grocer, let's say Walmart is the only place in the county, right, to buy food. That's how you know it's a service. All right, it can't be a right. In other words, the government has just decided, the state has decided that everyone in this county should eat. But what if there's literally not enough food? No matter what legislation you pile on top of that, there's not enough. So, what if we start arbitrarily deciding what's a right as well? Like cell phones. I know that one bumped around for a while.
Yes.
Cell phones cannot be a human right. They are far too costly. They are far too demanding on the Earth's resources. Like, it just doesn't work that way.
So
I really want to talk about that.
Yes. So before we talk about cell phones, one thought I had about this when it comes to like universal basic services. So let's just say that food is a service. Like, let's remove the income part of this out of it. Like, quite literally, like as a service.
So,
let's simplify it. Yes.
Like I say, I mean, with the one grocer in the county example, that's how you reconcile that.
Right. So to encounter this in terms of like just food and providing food, and like what you just said a second ago, I think is valuable. That is to say, no free lunch, and like these things are produced, and you can only have so much of it. So I want to factor in though this current situation with automation and that sort of thing. Like, it does seem to be like we are constantly progressing towards it's getting easier and then easier and then easier to produce this sort of energy, food.
And it's becoming easier to produce the producers, and so on.
Is that to say that the population itself is growing, or is that to say?
No, I'm saying it's becoming dramatically easier to create the machines that will make the stuff.
Most certainly. The whole thing is exponential.
And then machines that will make the machines that make the stuff.
Yes.
It's
and the things that
easier.
manage the machine, so on and so forth. It just becomes extremely easy, and you kind of it's becoming more and more and more so that of these base things, this food thing, that you're removing the human element out of it. It just becomes this perfectly automated thing. So what I'm trying to imagine here is so you currently have like the current capital system here, where it's a bit like a triangle, like so. We have like these workers on the bottom rung who go out and like actually do this sort of agriculture thing. Now, agriculture may not be a stellar example of this because each of these men and women are private owners of their farms, and they just sort of sell items here. But I want to imagine it like this, where it's like this system right here, where like down in the bottom rung there are these farm hands that do this work, and then it works its way up to like the farmer that is essentially in charge of the entire operation, and that's essentially also where the income is designed. Now, don't get me wrong, intellectually speaking, it is pretty damn hard to be that guy at the top. I'm not trying to talk about like who's owed what. I'm just trying to talk about right now. As you remove and automate things, this bottom rung right here, farm hands get smaller. That is to say, there are less farm hands that are necessary. Smaller.
There's only one direction to go. Is up.
Yes, and then eventually one day there will be such a situation. There's a man sitting in a chair. He's doing nothing. And the automation that was designed and the administrative software that controls these designs are all perfectly in a closed system. What do I mean by closed? Humans are no longer required for it. Imagine this. Imagine this for yourself. Amazon, all of the drivers are now replaced. All of the things that manage the drones that deliver the objects are replaced. The software that designs the stuff that's most supernormous stimuli that kind of get the attention of their viewers are replaced by software. It's all completely replaced. And then somewhere down the line, there's a Jeff Bezos III sitting somewhere in a chair, minding his business, doing nothing all day, and being the richest man who has ever lived or will ever live. Like, quite literally a trillionaire.
But it's not a person. It's just some artificially intelligent construct.
Yeah, well, that point it defeats the purpose. Like, the whole point of the reason why I brought this up is
it's Mr. House.
We're in this circumstance where that guy's is more or less getting a free lunch at that point, is he not? And like, it seems like stuff is being produced out of at least from the human component, nothing. No, it's getting produced. All this automated stuff is getting done. The work is done. There is no free lunch. The stuff was made. It's just humans had nothing to do with it. These systems have closed themselves, and we exist outside of the system now, trying to decide how to engage it. At the moment, the way it seems to be going, if you and I looked at the next 4 centuries, is exactly what I just said, I think. And I want to see if y'all disagree. We end up in a circumstance where the money gets funneled into pockets in such a way that the ratio of people with this money will get smaller and smaller and smaller and smaller. And the amount of workers that incorporate themselves within the system will get smaller until eventually, well, I won't say close, because I don't even know what that necessarily is, where there's no human component, but it closes. And the amount of humans it takes to produce trillions of dollars is very low. And you have a lot of people not either A, they find a different niche, or B, they're just not sure where to put themselves. But you have a lot of people that aren't involved, at least with this Amazon system. And you just have one dude making trillions of dollars, trillions of dollars in a very short period of time.
That's what I mean, Trevor. This is what I mean by this is where it gets fuzzy for me, because we straight up have the money, like we straight up have the resources at hand to take care of these people, but we're putting it into other pockets, and then look, people, as I grow in my 20s, I see less and less difference between a plantation and the system we're in right now, where it's like, let's just have us a little thought here.
Yes.
I get to perform a vital sociological, function as a teacher, and I get to be poor about it. What in the fuck are you talking about? Like, you know what I mean? If you're performing a function for society, if you're performing, a function for the betterment of mankind, you should not be poor. I'm sorry. I'm not saying you should be rich. I'm saying you should at least be able to live. Right. And I just filed my taxes, and they want $500 more out of me. It's like, you have got to be shitting me.
Right.
Like, I mean, seriously, like this can't go on.
Listen, let me get some words in here, because there's a lot that's been said. First off, Star Trek. Love watching the clips of all the cast members talk about the show, and they're all, pretty much on the same page. They're like, this show is here to remind us that a better world is possible. We just won't fucking listen.
I love Star Trek so much.
It's my favorite show.
It's my favorite show of all time.
Something else was said too, around about the ballpark of that time, about, I think, Stephen, you were talking about, if, pardon me, even if money wasn't an object, you would still be a teacher or in some capacity, like you are now. You'd still be doing the same kind of work. And I feel the same way.
And I predict that's probably the same for most people.
Well, there's definitely a population that would agree. They'd say, I'm where I want to be. But this is something that I have personal experience with. I went to college for several years before changing my major to something that I actually felt passionate about personally instead of passionate about financially. Not that I don't enjoy things like computer science or tinkering with things or whatever, but I'm not going to kid myself or anybody else when I say that I was doing that because of the money and the salary tags that were attached to the jobs in that field.
Why shouldn't that be a good thing?
Well, because I don't think that money answers all of our issues.
No, it doesn't.
Which is because I ended up taking philosophy classes, and now here we are. Yep. But at the same time, it should be any example that somebody who changed their major from computer science to theater and went to graduate school for the same thing should tell you something about what I think about money compared to other parts of life. Because I think if there's that phrase that if you do what you love, you never work a day in your life, and you can take an angle on that. But if money was not an object, I would still be doing things that I do because I enjoy doing them. And there was a way I wanted to say something earlier, but basically, I chose to do theater or communications or what have you, basically to be an artist, not because of the money, because of the enjoyment that I got out of it. And so to me, money isn't an object because I'm poor because of that decision. I'm poor because of that decision. So in a way, we're already living in that reality. But that being said, a couple of other things. some things were said about how to deal, what constitutes a right versus a service, and then also how to deal with something regarding UBI like patient numbers. And this is something that you said yourself in a previous episode, Stephen.
Yeah.
Matter of fact, this book right here that just so happens to be sitting here, it's called Talking to Robots. It's kind of a little bit of a comedically toned book. It's written from the perspective, I might have mentioned it in a previous podcast, but it's written from the perspective of somebody in the future reminiscing on today's time, as if we've already invented all these different robots to do these jobs. And one of them is the doctor bot, or however you want to call it. That is, as you said, much better at diagnosing people than we are, and such and such. And so even though this mentions as well that doctors may be one of the last jobs replaced by artificial intelligence, or at least by bulk supported by that. I think this is, again, I come back to my support for things like automation, just so long as they are done with the support of the people in mind. Because if one doctor or a couple of doctors can utilize artificial intelligence to help them see many more patients than they would normally be able to do, then that's a great thing. And that helps us keep something like universal healthcare in place so that people can get the care that they need. But it has to be done the right way. And currently, that's our biggest problem, is figuring out how to do things the right way. And then the last thing about, what do we see as a right and a service? I think if you need it to survive, it is a right. It should be a right. If it is something that helps you significantly get by in the world, but you could survive without it, I think it's a service, but you could even argue that certain things in that avenue lie in the middle. For example, education. We can survive without going to college. However, it greatly benefits you to get a higher education.
Yeah,
we cannot survive without water.
Yeah, it's funny that way. So look. Education, right? You can survive without education, right? But we have decided as a people that we will subsidize education to the point where it's free. Okay, so like if you don't want a private education, you can come get an education, for free. Great, I'm okay with that. It's just, it's hard. It's even hard to think about, because if education is a right, and I mean like a really concrete right. Once again, if somehow I ended up being the only educator in the county, I've got to really touch on that. I've got to organize curricula for 12 grades, more classes than that. I've got to do this, that, and the other. Look, of course it takes a village. Of course it takes a village of teachers, of doctors, of firefighters, of police, it takes a village to do all these things. People, we're a socially aggregate species. We will not never take care of each other. It's literally within us to take care of each other. Don't get me wrong, we have psychopaths who decide that $1 million isn't enough.
Right. Go look up Jeff Bezos laughing on YouTube.
Yeah, I mean, we've got some genuine Bateman motherfuckers out here that love to know that they have a villainous wealth. I mean, and I love this line from Poor Things. It's a movie that me and Keegan have been watching the crap out of. We just cannot stand how much we love this movie. Shameless plug for it, by the way. Everybody should go watch Poor Things at some point in their life. She goes, money is its own form of sickness. And I could not agree more. I despise money. I really do. But I've always viewed it as a necessary kind of evil. People in an ideal capitalist situation, let's say me and Bray were making a trade.
Did you just say ideal capitalist in the same sentence?
That's what I'm trying to say. It's really hard to quantify this outside of a cartoon model. You know what I mean? Because we could of course say, like, if you said in an ideal communist situation, I'd say, did you just say ideal communist in the same
Yeah, it's the same
breath?
thing. Yeah.
Karl Marx was insane, people. Like, we need to be able to look at what he said with a grain of salt, period.
Yeah.
We need to be able to look at what, even our own founding fathers type of thing, like as religious as we are about them, we need to be able to look at what they said
Yep.
and say, okay, let me really think about this. But anyway, like money, right? In an ideal situation, capitalist situation, what's the perfect form of money? Bray has that microphone right in front of him. Let's say that he wanted to let go of it for $30, and I wanted to buy it for 20. We met somewhere halfway in the middle, blah blah blah, and it's 25, right? Bray values that $25 more than the microphone. I value the microphone more than the $25, and in that way, it's a positive sum game. And as long as the resources are coming in, it's a positive sum game. Uh, you know, it's becoming a really tough time because the definition of technology is making product X with decreasing and decreasing resources Y and Z or whatever. We are getting to the point now where we can produce product X with dramatically lower and lower resource costs. And I'm not talking about just in the terms of like, something foolish like hard resources like wood. Like
Sure.
think about it like you're playing an RTS game. You do not have enough wood to create this. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about like energy. That's the real thing that we're always worried about. Like every gas company you can think of is worried to death about, finding the next 1% leap in like efficiency, just one stinking percent. They'll pay out the nose for it because they want to use less and less of the resources at hand to make more and more money.
Yep.
So my point is that it's obvious to anybody this has gone too far. But it's also obvious to almost everybody that, like, at least not. It's almost obvious to everyone around me that we've gone too far. That some people have far too much, and just because they're unwilling to give it up is probably not a good enough reason. And but on the other side of that, we've got a lot of people who are just like, I just want to work and be paid a living wage type of thing. I don't know. It's so tough. It's so tough.
It is. So my full concern about this is I'm one of those people that's I'm not on the fence about right now. Like, as strange as it sounds, I think a universal basic income. No, I can't even go that far. Right now, I'm in a state of affairs that I don't think a communist revolution is in order in the United States. I'm not one of those people. I don't think that that's necessary. That's my opinion.
Well,
So that's the first thing I'll say. I think that the system isn't broken, like in that big uppercase B word. And I don't, and just like what was mentioned earlier, specifically, of like from each according to their, what's the full phrase? I actually never memorized it. But
from each according to their gifts, from each according to, or rather,
right, creating a clear. No, I see what you mean.
Yeah.
So I do think that creating a system like that, I do think eventually leads to a system in which there is no incentive, and then just everything slowly sort of dwindles away until you have what happened in the Soviet Union. I do think that's a valuable way of looking at the Soviet Union and how it collapsed. I do think those things are. I do take all this into consideration when I think of the current state of affairs in the United States right now. However, I'm really concerned because it seems to me, necessarily so, that a time will come in the United States where the system closes, where no one's getting a free lunch per se, but no humans are making the lunch. The lunch is being made by someone else. That is to say, an artificial intelligence, which we place no ethical value in, seemingly. Like we aren't creating. What if we exist in a space in 2108, or maybe sooner, maybe 2060, in a state of affairs where a mass majority of the lunch making is being made by robots and software, and in that circumstance,
they already run the stock market. I mean,
a point made. Exactly. Here's the thought. Okay, I'm sitting in a room. an AI software pops up, or a bimodal thing, whatever. A robot doctor pops up and gives me a full checkup and all this kind of stuff, and tells me what kind of medications I need to go buy and all that kind of stuff, or gives me a surgery. Let's go all the way into it. Gives me gives me a surgery, a full surgery thing, and like completes all of it. Then I go home. Who the fuck am I paying? Like, where is my money going? This robot doctor did it. He's not getting
Yeah.
paid. He's a
At
piece of
that point,
software. And
hopefully you wouldn't pay anybody.
yeah, see, that's
You
my
know,
point though, because that
hopefully
doesn't
you just
seem
help pay the power bill of the
we
hospital.
right, exactly. Like, but that's the fundamental issue here, because that's not where we're going. That's not what 2060 looks like right now. It looks more like a piece of software is created, a surgery components are created to create the figure, the visage, which is this AI doctor to take care of you. If that part's done, that part, people get paid here, and there, and then perpetually people continually pay in money into the system for this service again and again and again, where I pay the same amount of money as before, because it just doesn't seem like you would pay less for anything. I mean, this is the world as it is. You never pay less for
This is
anything.
America we're talking about.
This is
We always
America we're
pay
talking about.
more for
You're
things,
gonna
you
have
know.
things go up. So just like that, you have a service where basically imagine this, 30 people it took to create the software for that AI doctor. That's all it took and then like the people it took to design those devices that then commit to the surgery, right? Let's be a larger number here. Let's say it was like 5,000 people, right? That those numbers
Well, I was about to
pale
say,
in
Trevor,
comparison to
I
all
was
of
about to
the
say, look,
doctors around the United States. And
yeah,
suddenly they replace the central role that they surmise. And suddenly the amount of money that you put into getting a surgery from that time period that went into the pocket of this doctor, who went, for better or worse, went through doctors, like a full actual career, and you got a doctorate to then become a specialist in feet or whatever it was, went out and did this thing. Suddenly, all of that money, instead of going to that individual doctor, which is a hell of a lot of money, the same amount of money, no, more, because as you just said, and I do believe is valid, things just get more expensive. That's the central order of things. That money just goes to that 3,800 people it took to design the AI and the hardware. And just like that, you're in a circumstance where the money just gets funneled straight into this tighter and tighter and more closed system, to such a point that, just imagine this, where a century later, you're living in a circumstance where a lot of robotics have taken over and help out with this medical apparatus. We're just talking about like doctors right now, and take care of all this. And like, not even the people who designed it are getting paid by your service. The people who were born by the people that were born by the people are getting paid for your service. I'm spending $130,000 on this surgery, this heart surgery, and then some guy's granduncle is getting paid for it who did no work. It's a closed system at that point. It wasn't. It
it's
wasn't a.
totally proprietized out
Yes,
of
it's a
the
human. It's a human
spheres
free
of
lunch.
involvement.
It's a
Yeah,
free lunch as far as humans were concerned, and yet somebody's still getting paid, and I'm still paying somebody. It's truly an
yeah.
actual free lunch, and yet we don't exist within the system. And I can't understand or engage or encounter how you fix it. Like, again, we're talking about band-aids versus full
No,
blown surgery.
no. If you pay tens of thousands of dollars to a doctor,
Yes.
and by the way, Trevor, let's just double and double again your numbers from
Mm-hmm.
5 to 10 to 20,000 people, right?
Yes.
But we have to have more than 20,000 doctors in the country, right?
Right.
So even if we double and double again the number of people you assume to work on that project, that's
Yes.
still doing what you're talking about, funneling down and down. And
Right.
like, it's so hard to contemplate that. And my opinion is that if I pay tens of thousands of dollars into a surgery where no doctors were paid for it, it's time to burn it down. It's
Yeah.
time to burn down the whole
Yeah. Get
system.
Mhm.
It's time to start over.
absolutely. Yeah.
You know.
Imagine
But
paying. Yeah. Yeah.
let me
yeah,
throw
Imagine paying
something
one
out here when
hundred
you
and
have them.
fifty thousand dollars and like for a surgery, and like nobody but you knew about it. No human person knew about it other than you. You walked into this room. You're like, I'm feeling sick. They said your
but you
kidney
still have to pay for it.
is going to fail. I need to commit to you to surgery. We grew one for you. All that kind of stuff. It was done all automatically. You get the surgery. You go home. You're like, you had very serious surgery, and as you're walking home, you go, huh? I just paid $150,000
To
for
no one.
this surgery, and nobody knew. Just somewhere,
It
a
just
tiny
disappears
little
into the
thing.
ether.
Somebody's fraction of somebody's $1 trillion got a fraction of a cent larger, and you're destitute. And they never knew, and you're destitute. They never knew about you. They never knew any of this. No human being was involved at any step in the process, except for the point where some one dude sitting at the very top, not even at the top, just at the chair,
His villainous wealth grew by this much.
sitting in the chair, suddenly gets paid a little bit more money. It makes no sense. It makes no
None
sense.
whatsoever.
I
And look, I've
yes.
already said as much. If the economy is built by and run by machines, like and humans are not there, what's the point?
Mm-hmm.
You know,
That's absolutely right.
I would be the first to suggest that if we entered that level of like no scarcity, where the sun was ultimately our cap on like energy,
Mhm.
you know, my goodness, get rid of it. It no longer serves a function. Like, just get rid of
Like
the money situation. But we don't live in that yet,
what
and we're already feeling the effects of it big time.
what if
You
we
know,
what if we do a thing like copyright? Like imagine this. Think about this. So my worry was the one I just stated there is like a company is created by so and so, Jeff Bezos, and then like literally he does this work and like it's almost nobody is involved with it other than himself and these billions of dollars worth of AI, robots, and machines to do all this work. And then right after all of it, we what if we just pass some laws where like after like 60 something years of like, okay, you invented this thing and that kind of thing, so you get income on it. And after like 60 years, what if we just I don't like seizing. I really don't. I think it's gross. I think it's a poor I think it's a really bad first step towards something really heinous. But at the same time, if everyone's paying into this thing, I mean, and like no
well,
work is
Trevor,
being done
hold
into
on,
it.
hold on a minute. So
Please.
let's examine the art situation for a moment here. Let's say I
Mm,
write a book, right? And then I publish this book, and it becomes huge. Okay,
mm,
in 100 years, that book belongs to the culture of mankind.
yes.
You know what I mean? Like that's
Right.
probably how it should work. I mean, you know, if it's been 100 years, say nothing of my life, uh, I, what I contributed to mankind must belong to them.
Yes.
You know,
Yeah.
so like if you have I get what you're
Hmm.
saying, and I do like that idea. I do
Yeah.
like that idea. Like maybe we should start taking that idea more seriously. Like if you invent a process or like a company, it goes into like a public domain
What
after
if
a
it's like a
while.
percentage thing? Imagine this. If it's
Yeah.
like some amount of the product, like if less than 5% of the things involved with the product, I don't know how to count this ratio. It's impossible to count it. But if like the amount of employees it takes to even run the thing that you're doing to a point where it's almost entirely automatic, if a certain threshold is reached, then it becomes universalized. You know,
It becomes public domain.
it
Yeah,
becomes. I don't
I
even
could
mean
really get
like
behind that plan. I could
right.
really
But here's
understand
what's
that one.
scary about this. Here's what's scary about it because I'm not talking about an idea. I'm talking about the company itself, like
Oh
the
no,
actual
yeah,
thing.
I know.
Yeah, but I
Like
want to put emphasis on how crazy that is
yeah,
because like I'm saying these words and I'm trying to encounter it in the best way I can. But this
I want to
sounds
hear from
like
Bray soon.
yeah. I'm sure he feels very strongly about this.
Oh my god, no! I just keep thinking about it because the more, and then as soon as Trevor said, "I don't want to use the word seize," I thought
Right, but
immediately
it's literally seizing the
I
means of
thought
production. That's
immediately,
exactly what I'm
Yo,
it's
talking
never
about.
too late or a
Listen,
bad
all I'm
day to
saying
seize
is,
the means of
listen, all I'm
it's
saying
never a
is,
bad day.
I'm not a communist.
We're
But
so
All I'm
close.
saying
Listen,
is, I'm
listen. We
not.
not.
don't have to be a
But
listen.
if we exist in a
That's
world,
not communism. Well, it's part, but it's not the whole shebang. Go ahead. Yeah. Let Trevor. I want you to finish your thought.
thank you. Well, the reason why I bring all this up is like it seems like that revolution of theirs and like Russia, it just happened like 4 centuries too early, or like 2 centuries too early, however long it took. It did. Like it needed to start when
Oh
everything
my
was automatic.
goodness!
You
This
know,
is this is like
Look.
the
like the reason why the Soviet Union
listen.
failed. The
I think
reason,
they report.
well, the
Red
reason,
October happened
yes,
400 years too soon.
yeah, that's right.
No,
So
make it stop.
the reason why I'm worried about all this is the reason why it failed back then is it was still incumbent upon the system to have the workers, the proletariat, let's say, do things. It was incumbent upon
Do
human beings
things,
exist. Yes, as silly as that is, but it was
things and
incumbent
stuff.
upon the system at large in the Soviet Union to force its slaves to do its labor, essentially, to have its proletariat class do its thing and like exist. Well, humans don't work like that. They require some sort of incentive. It just doesn't seem to work, and eventually things tend to cave in on themselves. Either that, or convert to such an extent to some other system that you can't even call it communist anymore, such as like China. Well, this is a different thing. What we're talking about right now. This isn't recreating the system so that workers can work at a bare minimum. This is realizing that there aren't even workers anymore. It's just a bunch of people sitting around jerking off, not sure of what to do. And all of the things that produce the lunch, it's not even a free lunch anymore. It's just the things that produce the lunch aren't human. And we need to make a decision about what
Well,
happens to these
Trevor,
systems at large.
let's be clear. You
Yes.
know, so like um to be totally clear,
Mm.
there's no such thing as a free lunch. Really is a reiteration of the laws of entropy.
Yes.
So like, and I don't want to hang on this too long or anything, but if the system is closed to humans, right,
Mm-hmm.
but produces goods for humans, ultimately it had to be a natural resource from which it was tapped.
Yes.
It had to be some kind of energy production ultimately from the forces of the solar system or Earth or
Mm-hmm.
something like that. So I mean, it's not that there's no free lunch; it's that we're literally getting the lunch from the universe. Like we're literally plucking at the apples of Eden right now. Like you know, what I mean? We're able
Right.
to eat the fruit of the
And
universe.
God's
Just
keeping a tab.
yeah, God's keeping.
Yeah.
Listen,
And
let me say this. Let me say this because I think it's important.
we got to wrap up soon.
Right. Right. Right.
So, some things were said about communism and capitalism.
Some
Um,
things.
I
Several
am not a
things.
communist, and I don't like capitalism. I don't like the idea that everybody should be, and this is going to be me bastardizing communism for all the Marxists and otherwise out there. I don't hate you either, just like I don't hate the capitalists. I just think you're wrong in some avenues. Um, I think they're both too extreme. I think there needs to be a middle ground. I think if I described myself politically, I'd say that I'm some sort of democratic socialist. And in the most explain it like I'm five way. What I mean by that is that I think that we would do better collectively agreeing on what we should all pool our money towards for the benefit of everyone. I support social programs. I think they are the backbone of this country. I don't think everything should be a social program. I don't think because I have a Game Boy Advance that everybody should have one or no one should have one. I don't think that we should all have to live in the same, such and such by such and such length cubicle because it's fair that way or whatever. I think there's a way to do it.
For the listener and viewer, Bray is not strawmanning me right now. I don't believe that. Like
Mm-hmm.
we're talking about just logical extremes and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm. But to my point here, a lot of my feeling towards stuff like this discussion of UBI or kind of where we've gone now to UBS, Universal Basic Services, is that I think when it really comes down to it, nobody, no one, no single soul should be able to profit off of my need, my like absolute need. Nobody should be able to profit off of what I need to survive. And at first glance, that might seem, daunting. Like I said earlier, you might be a little taken aback, like, oh, what, McDonald's shouldn't be able to profit off of your need for food. No, I think McDonald's should be able to profit as a corporation, as a business, off of my want for certain types of food. If I want to eat shitty McDonald's, then that's
By
my
all means,
choice.
yeah.
And I should be able to choose McDonald's over something that, as I personally believe, should be either, what's the word I'm looking for?
Mm-hmm.
Basically cushioned by the government, subsidized.
Mm-hmm.
Something that's subsidized or provided to me in a universal basic service like food stamps. Like, not enough time to talk about it here, but I think in an ideal world, all citizens would get a allotment of water and food every month, perhaps. And they say this is how much that you're going to get for free, and anything you need more than that, then you will pay out of your own pocket. Just like I could go to the grocery store, I could go to Walmart or go to a whatever grocery store, and I could use my government issued food stamps or whatever you want them to be called, and I could get using those groceries. But if I needed something more, then I'd pay out of my pocket for, because I want McDonald's or I want something else. Same thing
I
with
want to chip in right here real quick. I actually have a
sure.
data point for you, Bray. Even though it's not technically like in favor of any of the arguments I've made today, one thing I wanted to bring up, USDA.gov literally says, like, you look up food waste in America and it's the first thing that pops up. It says 30 to 40% of the food supply is food waste. You know, so
Meaning that
it's wasted.
almost
It's completely
right.
wasted. So let's half that. Let's just say 20%. What if your grocery bill was 20% easier?
Mm.
You know,
Yeah.
I mean, like, we talk about a lot of automation and technology in this episode. You know, we're getting better at getting that food where it needs to go and so on. I mean, it's just a part of. I feel
Right.
like it feeds directly into your argument about this sort of thing.
Right. And thank you for that. That's a great tidbit. But again, nobody should be able to profit off my need, just my wants. And this applies, I think, to food, to water. People, you hear people outraged about the Nestle situation, and the idea that some corporation can hold massive amounts of our water. I mean, look at the West Coast. Here in the South, we don't really worry about something like that because of all the rivers and things like that.
Well,
But
really,
over
the aquifers.
in the West, well, true. It's nowhere near the same situation. And can you imagine if somebody just owned, even 30-40% of the land in which there was water available for use? They could do whatever they wanted
Well, so
at our detriment.
straight
But
up, another good point for that, Bray. And I'm not trying to help your argument. I'm just
sure, I'm getting.
I just keep having thoughts about it. Like, oh my goodness, you're seeing this in real time. Is my whole point.
Right.
Let's say you're watching a movie, right? And let's say that this is like a survival type of movie. Okay, like they're having to survive somewhere, and one primate says to the other, "Yeah, I own 60% of the land around this lake, and you can't go there. But I need water. We all need water.
Right.
Well, oh well." You know
Yeah.
what I mean? Like I notice I haven't said anything from this hypothetical person that's just like evil. You know what I mean? But like if you were watching that movie, you'd be like, what the hell, dude? Like,
Right.
if you were watching that
This
movie,
is
you'd be
this
like,
is what
"Man,
I mean, is
what are
that
you?"
we should not have to depend upon I should not have to depend upon my employer or some corporation to survive. This is where the UBS comes into play. Same thing with shelter and health care.
But
You
someone's
know,
got to get the water to us,
It's
right?
true.
right,
How
right,
do they
right.
make a living?
See, this is why I'm
What if
not.
we what
Well,
if almost
and
no one
hang on.
wants to do water transport?
Well, hang
Mhm.
on. Somebody's going to do it. If this is where and this is why I say I'm not some full blown communist, but I'm not some full blown capitalist. I think there's a middle ground in which somebody's got to do it, like you said, and so they are going to be compensated.
They should make a
Um,
living wage. My goodness.
right. It comes down to this. It comes down to exploitation, I think, in the sense that consider if there was a UBS program in place and I had to worry less about where I was getting my food, where I was getting my water, where I was going to sleep, how I was going to deal with illness or other basic medical needs. Suddenly, that minimum wage job doesn't look so bad because I'm not worried about my paychecks supporting what I need to survive. It now that's been cushioned and I can use that money for other things like saving money or putting that money towards other things that I need or want. we talk so much about what we need, but it makes it almost impossible to talk about things that we want. But yeah, I don't think that we should allow ourselves to be subjugated or exploited to the point where now I'm worried about where I'm going to get water or food or whatever. Like people are making
in a land of plenty.
We've said a lot about McDonald's. It seems to be one of our go-tos for good reason, but
maybe
one
that's
of the
why we keep getting such
contributing
traction is we keep mentioning McDonald's.
right. Well, look, one of the contributing factors to the fast food epidemic, obesity, much has been said about McDonald's. One of the contributing factors is the fact that people need to eat. And McDonald's has gone in and said, people need something. I'm going to insert myself there and employ a bunch of tactics to where people, are predisposed to want to eat my food because they don't have a choice. Our prices are the lowest. Our food is addictive. We're conveniently located next to the highways or next to your home. And our marketing and our stuff, we cater to your kids so that your kids will eat it, and then they'll bug the shit out of you, so you have to eat it too because it's convenient. They've found this little niche to sort of go in, and I'm not saying that it's all entirely wrong. I'm saying that the way that it's set up is that some people have no other option but to go and eat McDonald's every day. I mean, they could go to the grocery store and cook. Maybe they don't have time to cook. Maybe it is more convenient for them to do this. Sure, they could do it a different way.
Well,
but it's about making it easier for people to make better choices.
For me, right, the way you make it easier for people is to educate them. You start educating them on how bad McDonald's is and how costly it is. People, brothers and sisters, if you don't know, if you're wondering, this, that, or the other, it is much more cheap and much more time saving to plan ahead. That you have to begin using time as your ally.
Yes.
In this sort of thing, like a credit card almost. You use time as your ally with that. Anyway, my point is that go and make healthy decisions, people.
That might,
another rip on McDonald's for the bucks.
Yeah, that's right.
Our quota will be met.
It has been. And we're going to go ahead. I think we could cut the episode right there. Minute, a little over an hour and a half now. Yeah. Well, peace to all of y'all. All of you be good to each other, all that kind of stuff. I'm not going to steal.
Be excellent to one another.
Oh, he did. I was going to say I won't steal Stephen's quote, but Bray did it for me. So.
Oh, yeah.
It's not mine. It's
for the betterment of mankind.
That's true. It's true.
Right.
Well, and just like that, all of y'all have a wonderful night, and I shall see you on the next one.